You know, I first heard of Tommy Robinson a few years back. I didn't really know much about him. People would say, oh, he's a rabble-rouser. So that got my attention. I guess I am too in some ways. But over the course of the last few years, I've been watching him. I've been watching what he's posted. I've been watching him go to places like Israel. Now he's in the United States. And he has been prescient. He has been out there with a clarion call. And basically his message today, and I'm going to let him speak most of the time, is don't turn into Britain. Don't turn into Europe. Islamism will destroy your country from within, and you need to seal your borders. Tommy Robinson, it's a great honor. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, Mark. I'm blessed to be in the United States of America. I've enjoyed my first 4 days, and yeah, I'm good. I come with a warning to America.
And what is the warning?
The warning is, I only wish someone come to my hometown 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and told us this is what's going to happen and this is how it's going to happen. Now, what I'm talking about is not what I've read in a book. It's life experience. I was born in 1982 in a town 30 miles north of London. When I was born, there was one mosque. There's now 45. White English are a minority. My hometown has been named by the CIA as the epicenter of terrorist activity for Europe. Some of the kids I grew up with went to fight for ISIS. Many of them have ended up in prison for terrorism charges. I've experienced we're one of the most diverse towns in Europe, so I know the good and the bad. And our town was always divided by religious lines, not racial lines. We had a Muslim playground and a non-Muslim playground. We didn't create that. So I've witnessed all different cultures that come. My mum came as an immigrant. She was from Ireland. Many of my friends come from St. Lucia, Jamaica, Bulgaria, Italy. So we're all the sons of immigrants in Luton. And everyone gets on fine. Every community is assimilated. The Sikhs come, the Hindus come. They've all worked hard. They've all integrated. They've become part of British society. But there's one section of a community that just refuses to assimilate or integrate at all. And not just that, there's a level of hostility, which I never understood. Growing up, I just looked in, and I couldn't work it out. It was the Pakistani community. It was only when I really got my head into Islam and the doctrine of Islam and the teachings of Muhammad that I started putting it together like a jigsaw. So I'd seen so much. I'd obviously seen what's now called grooming. In the UK, they call it the grooming scandal. It's actually rape jihad. It's actually groups of Muslim men who kidnap, torture, and murder many times young English girls. And this is the darkest stain on British history. And if I go through some of the details from these cases, people would not believe it. And when I started my activism in 2009, and I heard your introduction where people call me a rabble-rouser, look, I'm not polished in education. I didn't go to a posh school. I'm from one of the roughest towns in Britain. I've come from the streets. But because of that upbringing, I've experienced that life. I've seen it. I know what it's like. So when with regards to the grooming gang scandal, when I started talking about this in 2009, I started an organisation called the English Defence League. And it filled with young men. You have to realise there was never going to be female school teachers or doctors that took on militant Islam in the UK. And when I was young back then, and we took to the streets in our thousands, and we hit the city centres, and we were demanding, it was a cry for help, we were demanding action against the rape of a generation of our daughters. Now, in 2014, it all fell down. The cards started to fall. We'd been screaming about it for 4 years. I'd been slandered, I'd been attacked, I faced the full weight of the British state trying to crush me, to break me, prison sentences, all because, and this is when you realise the scale of the problem, all because those in authorities, there was a conspiracy of silence from police leaders, religious leaders, political leaders, that actually facilitated and accommodated the rape of a generation of British girls. The numbers are horrifying. And I knew it happened in my town. And when I started a national organisation, I started finding it was happening in every town. So we started highlighting it. And the last thing any of those in power wanted was anyone knowing what had happened. Because what happened is the consequence of open border mass immigration. And America, brace yourself, because your borders for the last 10 years, or last 8 years, when they were open, which wasn't done by mistake, when your borders were open, they weren't open to Hispanic immigration. It wasn't Mexicans coming through your border. It was Eritreans, it was Pakistanis, it was Somalis, it was Afghanis, it was Syrians. And this is a whole different ballgame. So the seeds have already been planted in the United States for the destruction of the United States. And you need to learn and look at the failure in Britain, in Germany, in Europe, and no one needs to take my opinion for it. The numbers speak for themselves. Muslim men make up 3% of the British population. They're responsible for 90% of the groups of men that rape young children. 30% of the men convicted are called Mohammed. The rape rate in Sweden, 63% of those convicted of rape are Muslim men. They only make up 10% or so of the population. In Paris, 77% of the rapes, Muslims. If we look in Germany, Germany opened their borders to Syria. From 2017 to 2022, rapes went up 45%. Now, last year, 11% of the rapes were committed by Syrian nationals. This is in Germany. In the UK in 2003, 8,800 people were raped. Now it's 88,000. Now, these sort of numbers and these sort of statistics, if America's willing to sacrifice its daughters, its mums, and its sisters, in order to say they're a better nation for diversity, then allow your women to be raped as well, because that's what's happened in our country. That doesn't mean every Muslim is bad, but obviously I've become the vocal voice for this crime. It had been hidden for 30 years. We made it. We made them start looking at it. We brought it to the world's attention. And for that, obviously, my government hate me. For that, obviously, I've faced relentless persecution. I expected, when all this started, I expected the violence from the Islamic community. I knew the consequence of talking about these problems on the street level. But what I wasn't ready for was the full weight of the British state to come down, crushing down on me as a British citizen. And I then quickly realised that the country I live in is a very different country to the country I thought I lived in. I grew up thinking, well, we created the Magna Carta. We're the land of, we exported our democracy and our free speech. We live in a post-free speech era. We have no free speech. 12,000 people were arrested last year for social media posts in Britain. It was only 800 were arrested in China, in Russia. So that's a brief introduction. I've spent my life now, I've dedicated my life to raising awareness and speaking about the issues that no one wants to speak about. But fast forward from when I started in 2009, when I was hated, to now where we're at in 2026, I've been proven right on every point. People look at me very differently now, thankfully.
All right, before we take a break, we're on with Tommy Robinson. I really want you to follow this gentleman. Where do people go if they want to find out your reporting or your documentaries?
My documentaries are at trfilms.co.uk, TR Films. There you'll see all my documentaries. I've done a 5-part series on the rape gangs. I've exposed the BBC and the corruption within the BBC. I've exposed Media Matters in your country. We have a group called Hope Not Hate. I've exposed how they are just an arm of the British state. A totalitarian state has weapons. It has the media, it has the judiciary, and they're being used as weapons against us. So you can follow me at T Robinson New Era on X, or you can follow me now. I'm back on YouTube because I was censored for so long. I'm back on there, Tommy Robinson Online.
Our guest is Tommy Robinson. I've come to really admire this gentleman. Citizen journalist, author, free speech activist. You can go to trfilms.co.uk, find his documentaries there, and we're posting them on my social sites. Tommy, you spent a little while in Israel. What caused you to go to Israel?
So from when I first started my activism, in fact, just growing up in Luton, I grew up within the Muslim community. So at school, I heard a lot of hate towards Jews. I'd seen a lot of stuff, heard a lot of stuff. When I started the English Defence League, I obviously looked at the Israeli situation. And the way Israel is surrounded by terrorists and jihadists, so are we in England. So was I at Luton, in Luton. So I understood the mindset of the jihadists. I looked into them after the Beslan school massacre. I really went down the rabbit hole and started looking into what made the Beslan school massacre, so people understand. The school was taken over by Chechen terrorists. And then when the pupils were inside, the parents were all outside. And I can still see this visual now. And then they started massacring and killing the kids inside, the terrorists did. And then the parents were all on their knees screaming as they're hearing the kids getting killed. And that made me go down a rabbit hole where I started wanting to know how this wasn't one crazy individual. This was a large group of people. This was an ideology. Then I started understanding the Islamic Jihad ideology, and I haven't stopped looking since that day. And that was my wake-up call. So with Israel, I understood Hamas, I understood Hezbollah, I understood these groups and how they think. I'd seen it my whole life. As I said, Luton's the epicenter of terrorist activity for Europe. So I went to Israel asking questions in 2014. I thought, I don't want to be ignorant about this. Obviously, I speak a lot about Islam. I know the Quran. I know it inside out. So I've done my research on this subject. And I started talking about Palestine and Israel. So I thought, it's a bit ignorant of me if I talk about it and I don't visit. So I went in 2014 for the first time. And when I went there, I paid young Arab Muslims. So obviously, I risked my life because I was probably one of the most prominent figures against Islam in Europe. And I paid young Arab Muslims, and they took me to a Fatah-controlled refugee camp in Bethlehem. I spent time travelling the whole of Israel at this time, asking questions. But when I went to the Fatah-controlled refugee camp, I'm walking through the refugee camp with these Muslim Arabs. They don't know who I am, and I'm asking them questions. And what I expected was the total opposite. I said, "Who's oppressing you?" And I'm expecting Israel. And they said, "The Palestinian Authority." And I said, "What do you mean? Who's the Palestinian Authority?" And they explained who's in control of them, which was the Palestinian Authority. And then there's pictures of all these terrorists on the murals of the terrorists on the side of the houses, because all of these terrorists have left this refugee camp. And then he said she went and blew up a bus. She was a suicide bomb on a bus. This person went on a stabbing attack. And all their pictures are on the sides of the houses, because this is the houses that they lived in and they come from. And they explained that the Palestinian Authority rewards and pays these people for the rest of their life. So I then looked at it very differently, and I was with my friend we're both from a poor background in Luton, and so many people say poverty leads to extremism, poverty and things like this. And as I'm walking around this refugee camp, this Muslim Arab refugees, he said, "I'm a fourth generation refugee. My children will be fifth and theirs will be sixth. We will never leave this camp because it benefits the Palestinian Authority to have us here." He said, "And the only way you leave this camp is if you go stab an Israeli." So then I said, "So hold on. So if someone leaves this camp, if you're stuck on this camp of poverty, there's no park, there's nothing here. If you're stuck on here and you want to go and kill a Jew, you get rewarded." And he corrected me. He said, "No, not kill a Jew, kill an Israeli." I said, "What do you mean?" "So they can kill a Muslim?" They said, "Kill an Israeli, you get the reward. So they just have to go and kill any Israeli, and then they get financially rewarded for the rest of their life." So I went and started looking at the Palestinian Authority, and I saw that they're funded by the British taxpayer, me. And I couldn't believe this. This is pay to slay. So we are paying, and I couldn't believe I didn't know this. So these terrorists are leaving, and many of them are leaving and committing jihad and committing terrorism, but they're getting rewarded and paid for. So I saw this, and then I kept asking every Arab I met. So I didn't realise 2 million Muslims live in Israel. I didn't realise that. So as I'm in Israel, I'm speaking to Muslims, and we're on the Golan Heights, and bombs are going off in Syria at the time. But I approached this Muslim lad, and I said, "Listen," I said, "what's it like living here?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "What's it like for you? You're a Muslim, you're living in the state of Israel." He said, "It's brilliant." I said, "But what do you mean it's brilliant? Do you face oppression? Do you face it?" And he looked over where the bombs were going off, and he said, "Do you think I want to live over there?" He said, "I pray 5 times a day, mate." He said, I have a great life in Israel." So everything I thought I knew, things were the opposite. Yeah? Doesn't mean things are great, because I went and asked questions and I spent time with Jews as well. I spent time with a Jewish lady who was stabbed 13 times with a machete, chopped to pieces in a terrorist attack. So I just toured Israel, asking lots of questions. And what I found and what I'd seen in the UK, which is where I believe Israel are losing the battle, because and they've been asleep. He's got to hear in groups like this. They're terrorist organisations. They're now prescribed, but they got prescribed after October 7th. But I don't know why it took to October 7th. But these groups have been every Islamic society of every university in Britain and in the West. And then Qatar and Iranian money is funneling into these universities. So when October 7th happened, obviously everyone saw the level of hatred that was so confident, literally instantly the next day, so confident to take over entire universities, to take over every Western capital city, to walk through the streets and promote so much hate. And I always hear, and I think, so I've watched in Britain and I've seen the hatred and I've listened to it, and it's got to a level now, a disgusting level. And so after October 7th, I started speaking out and saying that this hatred can't be tolerated. And I've obviously, from the start of the English Defence League, I understood where Israel is. I understood what surrounds it. I looked at the Christian populations in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and I looked at if you want to call it a genocide, that's what we should be calling a genocide, is that the reduction in the Christian population to nearly zero in most of those countries. And then I looked at Israel. the only place where the Christian population has grown in the Middle East. The only place where you have freedom as a minority in the Middle East. The only place. So when I hear all the apartheid state, but then I went and visited to ask all these questions. So I've had a lot of flack, if I'm honest. It would have been easy for me not to speak about these issues. It would have been easy for me because I just get accusations all the time. And what they've managed to do, like right now I'm in the United States. I've obviously been given a high up clearance to enter this country because of my previous criminal convictions, but I'm still here. No one is saying I'm here working for America. There's no accusation I'm being paid by America. I visited the Polish Parliament with members of government. No one says they were paying me. I visited I visited Danish Parliament. No one says they were paying me. I spoke out when India and Pakistan went into conflict, and I jumped straight to the defence of India and spoke out on that. No one said they are paying me. But what they've managed to do is they've managed to scare everyone into talking the truth about Israel or in any way siding with the Jewish community, because they throw the accusation that you're paid Zionist. And then even on the sense of Zionism, like I said, so what? Like, what is a Zionist? I believe in a homeland for the Jews. Well, shoot me down. Yes, I do. Yes, there's 55 Islamic nations. There's 55 Islamic nations. The Jews can have one, okay? They're biblical, historical land. There's one land for the Jews. There's 55 Islamic nations. So obviously I just put things into perspective, and I also understand the hate, because I've seen the hate my whole life. So when I see Christians in America right now talking about a Muslim-Christian alliance, and you've got these Christians sitting there, or these right-wing commentators, who have never experienced what it's like to live around...
Let me slow you down a second, because we're going to take a hard break. We're here with Tommy Robinson, citizen journalist from Britain, really worldwide these days, author, free speech activist. If you want to check out his documentaries, you go to trfilms.co.uk, and you can find his documentaries. By the way, when you were in Israel, you met with the Prime Minister, no?
I was invited by Minister Chickley. So I was invited by Minister Chickley. So I met many members of government, but no.
And how about your own government? Do you get to meet many members of the Parliament?
I don't know if you're aware of the level of fear and political correctness. When the crimes I was talking about earlier, the rape of a generation of our daughters, fear is paralysing, and self-censorship, and people are scared of losing jobs. And what it managed to do was paralyse an entire nation. One of the fiercest nations in the world and the fiercest men in the world were paralysed through fear. It's pretty embarrassing, really. And that level of fear is embedded within our parliamentarians, who are scared to upset the boat or upset Islam or cause offence. They're always worried about the Muslims rioting or violence coming from the Islamic community. So no, my government, who I've been at loggerheads with for so long, they've betrayed the people. They've totally betrayed all of us with their mass open border immigration. And the thing is, it's a duty of someone to warn the nation and its people of a danger. And the comment we were just having before about political commentators in your country, who aren't just not warning, but they're lying. They're acting like Islamic immigration is not going to be a problem to the United States of America. So the United States of America, we can look at Britain. We have 40,000 terrorists on the terror watch list. 3,000 of those terrorists cost £9 billion a year to monitor 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 40,000. We had 4 times as many British Muslims went to fight for ISIS in a 3-year period than have joined our military over a 50-year period. Okay? If you want to look at Germany, look at France, look at all the statistics and all the numbers, Islamic immigration can destroy. Winston Churchill said it. The Islamic ideology has the power to bring Europe back to the Dark Ages. So Islam in a man is like rabies in a dog. That's actually one of the comments of what he said. So there's so many problems. It doesn't mean every Muslim is bad, because many of them are good. I've met many great Muslims. But Islam as an ideology and the power it has and the segregation and assimilation is a problem. So most politicians in my country have been absolute cowards. We're seeing a total change now in the last 24 months because courage is contagious, and the British public have risen in number like never before. Mark, about 2 years ago, what I did is I got together, and this is what America needs to do, and certainly your commentators on the right and the journalists on the right. I brought 15 of us together, and we spent 2 days locked away in a hotel, and I said, our culture is in danger. We're all recognising this, yeah? And the 15 I brought together were, whether you want to call them influencers, citizen journalists, we all have our own platforms and we all reach different demographics. So when we got together, we said, right, each one of us, over the next 2 days, we want to decide the most 5 important principles to us as a group. And then we want to start a cultural movement. Because if you change the culture, you change the politics. So we sat down and we come to an agreement between the 15 of us that free speech, preventing the sexual exploitation of young children, the rape gangs, Islam, mass immigration, and the LGBTQ plus mafia and the problems that are coming from it with the trans movement and all these things. So we can agree on this. Let's not talk about what we disagree on. Let's talk about what we agree on. And we say, if we agree on these points and we start making videos and we use our journalism and we start hitting on cultural issues, on political issues, then if we come in under one umbrella, then overnight we can put out a message in the morning and we will reach the nation. Their censorship is not going to work anymore. Elon Musk has given us back a voice. He's given us back light at the end of the tunnel. He's picked us up and given this country hope. We have free speech. There's a platform to have this discussion. Let us reach the nation. So we brought those people together. We agreed, and then we have built now over 2 years what I would describe as a cultural revolution happening in Britain. Our recent event on September 13th was the largest event in British history. Millions descended on our capital city. Something huge is happening. Alongside that huge cultural revolution is a Christian revival. America, I know there's an attack. We've had an attack on the church, attack on the family, attack on identity, attack on men, feminisation of men. All these things play into one part. But the biggest danger is when we lost faith as a country. We lost that Christian culture. And what filled that void was communism, Marxism, Islamism. All these different ideas filled that void. And then you had a lost nation. And if you have men who do not know where they've come from, or their history, or their background, or any of their identities that made us the country, or the reason we were Great Britain instead of Britain, what made us that, if you don't understand where you've come from, you're not going to fight for it. And that's what they were breaking down successfully with mass immigration, all these different attacks. And they were creating a weak nation, a nation full of cowards, a nation full of people who cared about themselves, a selfish nation. So we seek to embed and rebuild community, and that's what we've done with a movement called the United Kingdom. As I said, our next event is on May 16th. 9 million people voted for Keir Starmer. I don't know if you've been watching. He's the most tyrannical leader we've ever had. He's the biggest failure we've ever had. He's actually a laughing stock on the world stage. But 9 million people voted for Keir Starmer. 20 million people didn't vote. In America, 86 million people didn't vote. Now, those 20 million people, that's us. Now, how do we get them politicised? How do we give them a sense of cultural identity? We want to electrify them, give them back that sense of identity and that sense of belief and that sense of pride. And that comes through culture and identity, not through politics. Most of them don't care about politics. I didn't, until I started my activism, I didn't care about politics. As a working class man, I weren't rich enough or poor enough for it to matter. I didn't care. I wasn't interested. We need to be interested. We need to make sure we are, because the Islamic community, they're political. They'll be voting in up towards 90%. No one's voting in our community. So that's what we seek to do. And my government obviously hate me for this. I've exposed so much. My documentaries, which I just shared you, I have embarrassed them time and time again. And each time they've tried to destroy me, most recently with my 18-month prison sentence for making a documentary, it's backfired.
All right, hold on right there. I want you to focus in on that. Tell everybody in the country here, you went to prison for what?
So I made a documentary. There was a story that went out on the news. It was a story about a Syrian refugee who they said was being racially bullied in a school. And this story went worldwide. CNN, it went Australia, it went everywhere. Now, I found out that this wasn't a true story. So I made a report saying you're being lied to about this story. I can't go into too many details because I'll go straight back to jail, yeah? But I made it into a film. And then when I went to court, they said I committed defamation. So when I went to court, I produced covert recordings where I had teacher after teacher from the kids' school saying that they were paid not to tell the truth. I got all the school records that proved everything I said was true. I had all of the evidence, and this story was far bigger than Tommy Robinson, because what my story showed was what I call the unholy alliance. The media, the judiciary, the police, all these left-wing organisations, they all come together to suppress the truth or to end people and attack people. You saw the weaponisation of the judiciary against Donald Trump. You've seen the way the judiciary stands down when Antifa are arrested, or they let violent criminals off, or they let them out because they're funded by George Soros. You've seen the weaponisation of your own judiciary. Well, I had all of the evidence in a documentary that proved that this story wasn't organically viral. In fact, the story that happened at the school was held for 5 weeks. They planned to make it viral. They done criminal record checks on the Syrian's family. The day after the criminal record checks come back, this story become global news. So it was created into global news to push an open border immigration policy, that English people are racist and bad, and that Syrians are victims of this. And the truth was a total 360. So I produced all the evidence to a judge, and the judge listed everything that I showed him in covert recordings, and said if I ever release any of the information of this outside this courtroom, I'll get 2 years in prison. I then made it into a film, and at the second event of the United Kingdom, when we had 100,000 people in central London, and we had 1 million people watching live online, I released the film. I played the film, and I obviously knew it would end up in jail, but I thought I'd provoke them into the reaction because I wanted the world to see. Obviously, people, they call me a criminal. I've never been tried. I've got a long criminal record. I've never been tried by a jury. I've only ever been convicted for my activism, my work, my journalism, and they've lied and they've used the courts against me. So this film proved it, hands down. I released the film. They gave me an 18-month prison sentence. I spent 7 months on solitary confinement for making a trip. They didn't argue with what was in the film. They're not saying anything was wrong that was in the film. It's just I had an order that I'm not allowed to show the public the film. Now, how many other injunctions are there like this? How many other people are being silenced like this? In fact, well, I know that Laura Loomer has an injunction like this. She can't tell you that. But I know in the United States of America, they've got her over a barrel. So I know that injunctions and lawfare, I know that CARE use lawfare, I know that these Islamic, well-funded, Qatari-funded, Iranian-funded, sponsored groups who have militias in our own countries, and the alliance between them and the left, which is there now for everyone to see. Now, anyone who looks in history, we've seen it in Iran, the left sided with the Marxist sided with the Islamists to topple the government. We've seen it in Lebanon. We've seen this before. It's dangerous. And what played out in all those countries is playing out now in the West. We're watching it. So America, when you voted for Donald Trump, which was to save America, it's far bigger than to save America. You voted for Donald Trump to save Western civilization. You have reignited a fire in all of our bellies. Everything that's happening now in Great Britain, there's a ripple coming out of the United States for free speech. To see J.D. Vance, to see Marco Rubio grilling the European Union, see him in Munich, warning them about our citizens. We know that we've got people fighting for us. We live in a totalitarian state. We live in a post-free speech era. We don't have firearms. We can't protect ourselves. I had the police come to me, the week before I come out here, the police come to me, said I've been named in this month's ISIS magazine to be killed. And when they come and warn me, there's recordings of this, when they come and warn me, what they're warning is, they want to kill you, we can't protect you, and you can't get a weapon to protect yourself, because if you do, you will face criminal prosecution. Well, if you wouldn't have let these terrorists back into my country, if you wouldn't have allowed this problem to get so out of control, I might feel safe. I don't feel safe now, and rather than the terrorists having to leave the country, our British citizens and citizens across Europe are having to flee their nations because our nations are no longer safe. And America needs to learn from it, never let it happen, and get ahead of the curve, because luckily you've got some brave politicians already coming together to speak about these issues, which it took us 30 years. You know, since Winston Churchill and Gladstone, William Gladstone held the Quran above his head in Parliament, and he said there'll never be peace on this earth so long as we have this book. Our military leaders and your military leaders, I wrote a book called Muhammad's Quran, Why Muslims Kill for Islam. And in that book, the term Islam is a religion of peace. Do you know it was never said anywhere? I challenge anyone, try and find the term Islam is a religion of peace before George W. Bush. It was never said. So there was never a dispute about what Islam was. Islam was a warlike ideology. Muhammad was a warrior. It's never been a religion of peace. It never has been. So this lie, once told 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, it becomes true. If everyone's like, Islam's a religion of peace. No, it's not. Now, every leader's job is to warn the public. We have to warn the American public. We have to understand the difference between Muhammad and Jesus. We have to have this conversation. That doesn't mean we hate everyone. It has to be had. We can't just sit blindly and pretend it's not going to affect us, because it's going to affect everyone.
No, you're right. You're 100% right. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Have the whole nation hear you. And we're going to want to get you back even when you leave the United States, if that's possible. And keep posting.
I'm here for a little while, Mark. So I'm here for
Say that again?
I'm here for a while, mate. I'm in America for a little while. I'm gonna, and if anyone wants, I've got 4 books. Yeah, 4 books. You know my books. This is when you look at censorship. So my books were banned by Amazon. You can buy Hitler's book in the 14 different languages.
Yes.
But you couldn't buy Tommy Robinson's autobiography. But you can get them. You can get them at trbooks.co.uk. So anyone wants to hear my life story or hear any of that, then feel free to purchase my book.
Rich, put all that information on our sites where they can get his books too. Tommy, God bless. It's been a pleasure meeting you, my friend, and I'm sure we'll do this again.
Thanks very much, Mark. Cheers.
All
Keep up
right.
a good fight.
Take care of yourself.